Good to see you.
Hello, out there, revenants in vain. I hope everyone's doing well this evening. Okay, so for this special episode, we're going to be considering bayonets, as I've been kind of doing a lot of bayonets lately because of the Thunderbolt from DLC 3. I wanted to go over a little bit of my process and how I pick up a bayonet, how I play with it, why I choose what I choose, and kind of how each of the bayonets in the game are outfitted and kitted. Um, and what you see is not always what you get exactly. So we're going to be running the Scothic Chrome, or the Scothic blood code here, as it is the most balanced across the board, in order to be able to show all the all of the bayonets all in one go here. And then also at the same time, it allows us to choose pretty much any veil in the game, with a few exceptions here, which are strength based or dex based. But that's okay because you can extrapolate this to those different blood codes and veils. So get your calculators ready. I've got mine, I've got my spreadsheets, and I've got my pencil and notebook here. So we'll hopefully go through this a little bit by little bit. So I hope this can be a clarity guide for everyone to kind of understand bayonets, because like I said, they're a non-linear weapon in the game, and they don't scale in any kind of linear fashion. So what might be, a 10% scaling on a certain bayonet may be a 25% scaling on a different bayonet, and vice versa, and different things. And certain skills may or may not apply to bayonets. And so I just wanted to kind of show this so that way everybody kind of has a good understanding as to when to pick a bayonet and why, and what skills to kind of pick up and pair with it. As this is one of the most confusing topics in the entire game, because not every bayonet uh, benefits from a Atlas Chrome, or from a Heimdall Chrome, or from a Devour Chrome, or from or from these different things. So on top of the nonlinear scaling with each bayonet, then you have to worry about which chrome to put on it in order to get the most out of it. So it can be really, really cumbersome. So I hope this provides some clarity and some insight for people building bayonet builds. Okay, so let's go over this. Let's set some baselines here. So we will run a base Libertador here, and we're just going to do regular shots, and this all scales into the charge shot range. So we'll take a baseline here. A regular shot is 1309, so let's write that down. 1309 is our baseline. Okay, and then if we pick up the Queenslayer, for example, the Queenslayer bayonet, that's a 774. So you can see already it's almost twice the damage. So that has everything to do with how these are built, even though the Queenslayer bayonet has significant scaling in dex, has exactly the same in willpower, and it has less in mind. But then we look at our blood code here, and we're fairly balanced across the board, but we have a higher scaling in willpower than we do in dex. Even though the Queenslayer bayonet has a higher scaling in dex than the Libertador does by 2.5 levels of scaling, the Libertador does more damage because its main scaling component is from willpower. And since our willpower is our highest scaling component, then the Libertador will do more shot damage than the Queenslayer. And it makes all that amount of difference as double damage, basically. So that is your first thing, is that you want to look for the main scaling component of what bayonet scales. What is their main scaling component up here in the stats region. Okay, so if we are here with the we're here with the Libertador, so we will look at what since willpower is our main scaling component. If we run another willpower up, oh, that'll take us to A plus willpower, right? So that should be significant damage increase, right? Well, 1330 over 1309. So it's a 1.6% increase in damage. So, okay, but if we go with Swift Destruction, and since we're light, that'll give us a 20% damage increase. And 1570 over 1309 is exactly 20% or 19.94. So, this can help you decide, well, do I want to go for a 1% or a 20% damage increase? So if we also Survival Instinct, if we get down some health here, and we got to be below 50%, so we got to be below 1570. So now 1534 over 1309, this is less damage than Swift Destruction, so that's 17.2% damage increase. So you wouldn't want to go for Swift or for Survival Instinct here or Willpower up. You definitely want to go for Swift Destruction for a flat 20% increase to your damage, something like that. However, if we switch this to a Fortified Chrome here, and we'll take this off, our new damage baseline is 1358 instead of 1309. So that is a 3.7% increase. So that helps, but if you look at the difference here, 55 damage over 811 from the base here, that's 6.8% damage increase, but that's only on the physical attack. You don't know anything about the damage increase from the shots that are from the projectiles that come out of the bayonet. You know nothing about that scaling. There's nothing that's listed anywhere saying, this one has a physical attack, but then the shooting attack, the heavy charge shot, which is your shot projectile, it doesn't tell you anything about the damage there. So you have no idea what 55 damage actually means when you go to fortify it and you look at it. Now, you look at the Libertador Intensified and you think, oh, well, that's even worse, right? Because it's 108 down. So if we go back to this one, so that's 53 down. So it's a lot less than the fortified one. So if we pick this up and now we do a shot, that's 1363, which is more than the fortified by 5 damage. So it has much better scaling because we're scaling off of willpower, and since the intensified has a much higher willpower, well, not much higher, but a higher willpower value than the fortified, it will do more damage, even though the card tells you that the fortified is what you want to be picking. So, yeah. Welcome to nonlinear effects. So this is important to test here on the dummy that has no resistance, no weakness, and no damage buffs or any of that. So that's a little bit about the Libertador. Now, it is without question the highest damage bayonet in the game. There is nothing that compares to it. We could pick up a Brodea. We'll shoot that one. 974. Nowhere close to 1363. Let's pick up just this bayonet. 1082. That's getting closer. If we pick up a Rubelite Piercer, 672, even worse. Let's pick up a Bloody Snow, 692. That's about half damage. Let's pick up the Intensified, 656, even worse. See, now there's a case where the Fortified was much better than the Intensified, even though this has a willpower scaling of S, and this one has a willpower scaling of A+. So then let's keep going here. Let's pick up the Argent Wolf Bayonet, 1063. That's pretty good. Now this one is the rarest weapon in the entire game. I've been through 430 hours, 22 times through the place where these guys drop it. and I've only got it twice. So if you happen to get one, make sure you hang on to it and don't sell it. So let's go for the Burning Disaster Fortified. That's 601, but that does an AoE, so that has some benefit there. 580, even worse. So see, it's not always about intensified or fortified. It has to do with the scaling of the actual weapon with your code. Sunset Bayonet, 633. Black Bayonet, this is like a Libertador Mini, 996. The Libertador, we've gone over that. The Lost Bayonet, 870. Now these are all just regular shots. The Lost Bayonet, and then the Thunderbolt, 1247. So the Thunderbolt is one of the closest that you can get to the Libertador, which is why it's such a good addition to the game, because we finally have a great bayonet besides the Libertador, but it's an AoE, and it is a weapon that has stagger, it has knockdown, and it has guard break. So this shot here, the reason it's so powerful is because it's an AoE of sorts that's much farther distance than the Riot Breaker. See, the Riot Breaker can't even hit the dummy from here, but the the Thunderbolt can hit it from across much farther. So it has much farther reach than the Riot Breaker does. So that's why the Thunderbolt is so good, because it's fairly medium range. It's in a spread shotgun pattern, so it's an AoE and it can hit multiple things. It has a piercing effect. You can see that it's hitting behind the dummy. See that? So it is not a one-hit shot. So you can see here that the Libertador, when it hits the dummy, it stops. However, this goes through and hits everything behind, and then like I said, it has a guard break, it has a knockdown, and it has a stagger. So it's just truly just, I don't know what they did with this weapon, but they truly knocked it out of the park with this bayonet. I mean, this is, in my opinion, the definitive bayonet. I wouldn't use anything else if I had to choose one bayonet to pick up and use for an entire run through or multiple run throughs, and just, you know, bet the farm on this bayonet. This is the definitive bayonet in my opinion here. It doesn't have exceptional scaling or abilities based on the card here, but everything else that you have based on what it is inside of the game, that piercing effect, you don't have another bayonet that has that. Like I said, all the other bayonet shots, they stop at the target, they never pierce. So that in itself is a unique, and then to have those three abilities to stagger, knockdown, and guard break, that's just truly incredible to have all in one weapon. Okay, so let's go back to the Libertador. So we've solved the case here that the intensified Libertador is the highest damage bayonet in the game. And so now let's look at what Bridge to Glory does with it. Now, since we are Scothic here, we have a B+ in mind, so we can use it, and we have no Veil use at the moment. So 1363 and 1363 was our base for the intensified Libertador, and so Bridge to Glory does absolutely nothing for your bayonet shots. And if we choose a intensified Daybreak Thunderfang, which is the highest light scaling in the game, which is what Bridge to Glory scales off of, and we get nothing. So Bridge to Glory, if you're running a bayonet build, don't pick it up no matter how tempting it is, as it is a light scaling gift. It does nothing, absolutely nothing for the bayonet shots. So let's go back to our weak Veil here that we can't use. So don't ever pick up Bridge to Glory for bayonets. Let's look at Overdrive. So Overdrive is 1704, 1363. It's a 25% flat increase. And we can look at this one, 1559 over 1247. That's 25% increase. So it has nothing to do with the scaling or the weapon or any of that. So Overdrive is a great bayonet enhancer, as it it's a straight up 25% increase to your shots, which is fabulous. So always go for Overdrive. The problem with it is the effect ends when you take damage. So that is the problem with Overdrive. If you're running around and you're running something like this and you're trying to shoot people quick, you're going to be in some problems because they might get off a lucky hit and not take the stagger or the knockdown, and you can lose that 25% buff real quick. So ranged impact, this one, it stays active while you get hit or not. So let's go back to the Libertador. So ranged impact, so 2045, that is a 50% increase to your damage. Let's check this one, 1871, 1247. So that's 50% flat, and when it's paired, 2339 over the base, that's an 87.5% increase. So that is not a straight up 50 plus 25% increase. So there's a scaling that happens in there somewhere, and I believe it has to do with ranged impact paired with the dex ability of Skothic being a B+, and that the Libertador has a B scaling in dex. So these things are scaled together. So let's look at that again. So we're at 1247, or sorry, with the Thunderbolt, since it has a high dex scaling. So if we go back to the Libertador and we look at that 1363, let's do ranged impact, Overdrive, 2556. Again, 87.5% increase in damage. So it is not a additive, which is great. These are multiplicative damage buffs. So 1363 times 1.5 times 1.25, and that damage was 2555. So they are multiplicative damage increases, which is fantastic because you get more damage out rather than an additive damage buff. So let's look at Adrenaline. So 1363 was our base, 1499. So, and I believe Adrenaline is a straight up 10% increase. Yeah, it's a flat 10%. And let's see how it reacts with ranged impact. Is this 60%? We'll see. That is a 65% increase. So again, I believe these are multiplicative. Yes, they are indeed multiplicative. So you can have a 1.1 times 1.5 times 1.25. So you can have a 2.06%, 206% increase in damage from these multiplicative bonuses. So that is, so these three codes, or these three gifts here, scale off of your bayonet with the shots. So if we go for the Thunderbolt, this is good for me too. I'm learning this along with you. That's why I'm doing all the numbers here. So 2573 over 1247. So yeah, it's a 206% increase, the damage increase. So you're effectively doubling and a bit more your damage when all three of these are active. So if you're running a bayonet build, these are how you want to go about picking up the gifts. So Adrenaline though can be hard because it requires a strength of B, as Skothic has a strength of B because of how we've picked our passives here to make sure that we can use all of these gifts and everything all at once. So that would be the hard one for different other codes that are out there, is trying to get to a strength of B. Okay, so let's look at Willpower again. Willpower, and how it scales with ranged impact. So 1936. So it's now a 5% increase, or 55% increase, which I believe was a 2% and times 1.5, 1907. So it's more than that. So it looks to be like a 3.5% multiplicative, and I'm not sure it is multiplicative though. So, okay, now we're here, 1290 over 1247. So that's 3.5%. So it's a multiplicative 3.5% increase. So it's not exactly the highest, but because it is multiplicative, when you pick up these three other gifts, let's see here. Let's get some ichor back. 2, 3, and 5. And now we shoot, so 2662 over 1247. So that raised us up from a 2.06 to a 2.13. So that was a, let's see, 7% increase having willpower up. So 7% is fairly significant, which is why you want to pick up, in your passives, if you have the option to pick up a willpower up or whatever scaling you're going off of. Now if we pick up Dex, since this is also a Dex scaling rifle, it doesn't do anything. So 1247 was our base before, and we're right back at our base of 1247. So these shots, they all scale off of willpower. The same thing for the Libertador, as it also has a mind and a Dex scaling. So if we change this back to a Dex, 1363 was our base before, so it's our base again. And if we choose a mind up, 1387, so the Libertador scales off of mind and Dex. It doesn't scale off of just willpower alone. So we have mind and willpower up, so that's good. So if we had a choice here, we would want to go for a willpower or a mind. So let's see here. What's this one? 1387 for the mind up, and if we choose a willpower up, 1389. So it definitely scales harder off of willpower, even though they have equal scaling. It scales much more off of, well, not much more, but once the multiplicatives hit in, it will scale off of the willpower at a greater rate. Okay, so again, because these are multiplicative, they're non-linear effects, so that's why it's not like, oh, this is a 50%, that's a 20%, that's a 10%, you just add them up and you're good to go. These are all multiplicative bonuses, so that's why it can be really, really difficult when you're looking at the card of the bayonet to figure out how to build for it. The case in point right here, most people look at the card here and they would say, oh, well, this is a Libertador fortified, so because it has a plus 108 over the intensified, it's going to do way more damage. Actually, that's not the case, because as the scaling of the nonlinear effects kick in, you're going to have a much higher scaling damage ceiling off of the intensified. So that's why I always pick up the intensified. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, and let's look at now strength and dex. How does that change our scaling? It doesn't do anything. Let's look at fortitude and vitality. Does nothing. And then of course we know that mind and willpower, cognitive zeal, it's going to push us up over 1400. So let's go through now, and let's go 2, 3, 5, and 6. And remember, 1363 was our base, and now we're doing 2914. So yeah, 2.14, so 214% damage increase, and we could pick up another willpower, and we could pick up another dex and willpower. So now, since those are another 3.5 percentage points up, our willpower is at an S, and it'll be over that here in a second. So 2, 3, 5, 6. And just a regular shot is 3031 over 1363. So we're at a 222% increase in damage from running all the willpowers and minds up that we could find in the game here. So, and again, Bridge to Glory does nothing. These damage effects up here, whoops. Sorry, what are my buttons? Okay, so the damage buffs on your weapon, they are only for strikes. Whoops, sorry. Let's get rid of this and this, so we're back to our base. So remember, our base is 1363. If we activate blood, 1363. So it only has to do with your strikes. So if you're planning on playing a striking build with a bayonet, you don't want to go for damage increases, because their damage increases for striking are not as significant as they are compared to these nonlinear effects of the scaling of your bayonets. So if you're doing a striking build, I would recommend something like Hunting Feast, and coupled with Bloodsucking Blades, running both of them at the same time to increase your drain rating, coupled with weapon drain rating up, coupled with a Devour Chrome, as you can get your striking ability extremely high. And then you could couple it with a drain activator. So now the base on that would be a 0.82, and we're up to a 1.03, which is basically 1 or 2 I-core every strike. So that can get you back into business really quick with striking. But then again, when you're shooting, you definitely want to be scaling yourself off of all of the other benefits of these 4 gifts right here. And Dark Shout, that doesn't do anything as well, because it's for an active gift, like a dark gift. It has nothing to do with weapons. So those are the offensive gifts that you can pick up to boost your enhancements with the bayonets, and they all have a different scaling. So let's pick up. Let's go back to the Thunderbolt, and as we saw here, 1247. And if we pick up a Dex, where's the Dex? Here we go. If we pick up a Dex up, again, that doesn't change it. And again, if we change it to a Mind, that doesn't do anything either, because it has no mind scaling at all. It's zeroed out. And if we pick up a Willpower, then that picks up some more damage there, 3.4%. So let's go ahead and get rid of this, and let's bring out the two. Let's bring out the 2 ranged bayonets uniques here, so we know how those operate as well, because those are really important, as they are ranged. Or Fusillade Rondo is a 5-shot burst, and what is that? The Radiant Barrel is a long-range knockdown with massive damage potential. Okay, so we're running the Libertador here. We're going to go back to the Intensified. Now this is also where these two kind of get crazy and squirrely, as we'll see here. And remember, our Veil hasn't been even included in this yet to figure out how that will scale with dark gifts and different things here. So, like I said, this will be a long one, a lot of math involved, a lot of scaling, a lot of topics, but this will help you, hopefully, to understand when you're picking up a bayonet, really these two, as they are, there's really no other reason to use anything else except the Brodea, as it has the longest range in the game. So that has its benefits and use cases as well. Weight class is a big thing for bayonets, because they are fairly small and light and quick. So you want to be careful about your weight limit, so you're maintaining your quick velocity and speed. And again, we could pick up Swift Destruction, as that does have a flat 20% damage increase. And we haven't even gone over Survival Instinct yet. So there's just so much in this game. Alright, so we're at the Libertador, and let's look at the Fusillade Rondo. So that does 10,241. And if we go for ranged impact, 15,362, and that's still, you're 50%. So there's no scaling benefit that transfers as Fusillade Rondo is involved. It scales the exact same way as your regular shots. So any buff that would affect or change your damage from a regular shot of the bayonet, that will affect the Fusillade Rondo, and in this case, it's these 4. So we can predict that off of the 10,241, times 200. So we should be around 21,000 with our scaling effects here. So let's see here. Yeah, 21,888. So you're right in that range of 218% damage increase, and then again you could add on your willpower up, and I don't know, like a dex and willpower up. So that'll give us more. Let's take a sip of water here as we're a half hour in to the nonlinear effects of bayonets. I just don't understand how Bandai Namco is programming this. They got wizard boys sitting there in the programming lab, figuring this all out. So we're full up on dex here. Let's see how high we can get this thing. 22,770. And again, this could go even higher with a different blood code, such as Perseus or Orion or Weimer, as these have massive willpower scalings, but they do have fairly less mind scalings. That's why Perseus may just very well be the ultimate bayonet build, as it has for the Libertador, as it has a S+ in both mind and willpower, but it does have some other issues here. But we could get rid of these and go for something like this, and we could still be quick, with our blood veil. So that would be great. Okay, so let's go back to this guy and let's get rid of these two. Now we've gone over a lot here, so stop the video at any time, take notes, write down, get your calculators. So let's look now at Radiant Barrel. What's that damage? 89. Now you ask, why is that so low? Well, it has the unique trait of pairing with your blood veil. Oh my goodness. As if it wasn't complicated enough, now you have to worry about what gifts you have, coupled with what actually affects your active gift, and then what blood veil you're actually wearing. So let's go for ranged impact. And 89. So what do you notice about that? It's the exact same damage, no increase from ranged impact. Oh, but I thought it was a bayonet attack. Well, yes, it is. So, but it doesn't scale off of most active gifts. Again, Overdrive, no effect. Adrenaline, 89, no effect. So you might be thinking that oh man, you got this massive crazy build and you're gonna be blowing people away with, ranged, or with Radiant Barrel with all these crazy gifts, all these percentages, 200% increase, 89, and nothing. So, as bananas as that is, let's go for now something like, let's see, there's this one, which has, so this will be a usable blood veil. We're still normal mobility, but it doesn't matter because we don't have Swift Destruction on. So this, the Graceful Prominence, it has some dark and light gifts base values, but it doesn't have any scaling. So now let's look at Radiant Barrel. 2415. And again, that'll kind of, let's choose that as our baseline here, 2415. And if we go for Overdrive, 2415. So it just doesn't scale off of gifts. And if we raise our mind and willpower, as that should do something, 2415, it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do, which is bananas in my mind. It has nothing to do with the base damage, your damage as a bayonet, or any of the gifts that boost bayonets. Nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. So what does this thing get its damage off of? Well, it has everything to do with the scaling number of your dark scaling of the blood veil. So with that in mind, let's go for something like really low dark scaling. 509. Oh, there we go. 258. So that's really low light scaling. So, whoops, not that. Sorry. Wrong button. So if we look at this now, 2415 was our damage before. We're up to 3628. So it's a 50% increase in damage from that little bit of scaling there that we had, and it also scales off of light as well. So let's see here if we can find a really low scaling. I've increased a lot of things. Okay, so the silver garb. Let's look at this guy. 38, 98. So the damage is just going up and up and up and up and up because of our blood veil. Now if we go to something nutso, like the intensified Subzero Shroud here, it has no light scaling at all. All of a sudden we're over 12,000 in one shot. And if we increase our willpower here, again, it doesn't scale off of that. But because now, okay, now here's where it gets nuts. So because this is affecting our base willpower, which then this guy is scaling off of our off of our blood code with this scaled effects. So here, let's look at our gift, our dark gift, and our stats over here on the side. So over here we are at an A plus and a B plus and a 1690. If we go to mind, then that goes up to an A, and this goes down by 57. So if we get rid of this guy, let's look at our base again. 12,254. And then we add in a willpower up. 12,677 over 12,254. So it was a 3.5% increase because we increased our scaling of willpower, which increased our veil's scaling. So it has nothing to do with the damage of what Radiant Barrel. It has nothing to do with what bayonet you're running. So you could run any bayonet and you run Radiant Barrel and have the same exact damage out of all of it. It has to do everything with what scaling you're getting out of your blood veil, on top of what passive willpower's up you have. And so Cognitive Zeal is also doing double duty here. It's increasing all these gifts for Fusillade Rondo, and it's increasing your blood veil for the damage effects on Radiant Barrel. So to show this, that the other ones are straight up damage buffs, 2, 3, 5, and 6. And now if we run Fusillade Rondo, we were at 22,888, and there we went down. And we had Dex and Willpower, whatever, last time, and so that would have been our 500 damage that we were missing. So that so our veil does nothing, absolutely nothing, even with this bananas high numbers, the highest in the game here with the Subzero Shroud. It has nothing to do with your veil, but Radiant Barrel has everything to do with your veil, and nothing to do with the actual gun. So Fusillade Rondo has everything to do with your gun and the scaling effects of the active gifts. Radiant Barrel has nothing to do with the active gifts and your barrel of your gun, but everything to do with your stat scaling, and everything to do with what Subzero Shroud, or what veil you're wearing. So here we'll go for a Fortified, as it has fairly less scaling associated with it. And we were doing 12,000 before, 12,575. So that's, whoops, I didn't get an accurate comparison there. So we were at 12,254 before, and now we're at 12,207. So it's less. It's not terribly a lot, but because this is my channel, we're taking Code Vein to the absolute limits of what we can do. This is the absolute limit. So my case, I would go for the intensified just to get that extra 50 damage because I'm that anal about my damage numbers. And that again should give you some insight as to when to pick up what veil with what bayonet you're going to be running. Now we have one more topic to go over here, and if you're still with me, I mean, you must really, really, really love this game as much as I do. So we have these two, which are Swift Destruction and Survival Instinct, as these are also damage increasers. So for the regular shot, this is a flat 20% damage increase. It has it's just a straight up additive 20% damage. So to prove that, we're going to look here. We're at 1363 and 2045. We already know this is going to be a 50% increase. And then if we add in Swift Destruction, 2454. Oh, I am actually wrong. Okay, good. I am very, 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 very happy I'm wrong, because this is a multiplicative bonus as well. So 1.2 times 1.5 is 80%. So we are at 80% damage increase. So this is also scaling multiplicatively with all these others. So holy, my goodness, this is gonna go crazy here. So 2, 3, 5, 6, and Fusillade Rondo. Okay, 26,000 in one shot. We're knocking on the door of ridiculous. So let's look at our shots here. 1363, and then we'll go for Survival Instinct. We got to get our health down below 50%, and we'll see what this damage increase is here. So 1588 over 1363. So that's a 16.5% damage increase. But hold on a second. What does that do for our good friend the Thunderbolt here? We haven't been talking about him for a minute. So remember, our base for the Thunderbolt was 1247. 1547 over 1247. That's a 24% damage increase. So this is a straight up higher damage multiplier for the Thunderbolt as it was compared to the Libertador. So now all of a sudden you would want to use the Thunderbolt over the Libertador. Why? Bandai, you must have just people with PhDs in mathematics coding your game, not in computer engineering, which I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Borderlands did this. 2K did this with all their crazy nonsensical damage scalings in the multiplicatives of their shields and everything, and this is here in Code Vein, and me being me, I'm just eating this up, and so I am so happy that this is actually how it goes, which is why bayonets are so difficult in Code Vein, because it has it's the culmination of all your knowledge of Code Vein. How's your stat scaling? What veil are you using? What's your mobility? What are your gifts? What are your actives? What are your passives? And what weapon are you actually using? And what chrome are you even using on it? So, yeah, if you're having trouble with bayonets, this is why. And I really hope that this takes some of the fog and veil off of people. Okay, so now we know that is getting us a damage up. So 1497. Whoops. And let's see what this does here with the Fusillade Rondo, with all of our buffs and all our knowledge and all our big brain activities here to get us to be the ultimate damage. So see, again, the Libertador, since it had a higher scaling off of the active gifts, it didn't do above 26,000. The Thunderbolt only did 20,000, but it scaled higher off of Survival Instinct than the Libertador did. So again, let's go back to the Libertador. Oops. Let's go back to ourselves here, and let's go get our buffs. And we're gonna have to go down in health to below half health, and get ready for the numbers. I don't know if we can count this high. 28,293. 28,293 over our base for Fusillade Rondo was 10,241 for a maximum multiplier of 276% damage increase. Whew. Are you tired yet? Is your brain on fire? Because I know mine is. I gotta go render this now and kind of get some sleep. So yeah, make sure that you're paying attention to willpower, mind, and dex for pretty much every bayonet. I mean, they all have their differences in strengths and weaknesses and different comparisons, but for the most part, it's dex and or willpower and mind. I haven't found a bayonet yet that scales off of dex, so if you have high dex scaling, it's not going to change your shots. It's definitely going to change the slashing and the damage of how you do physical attacks, but it's not going to have anything to do with the superior firepower and damage that you can get off of the scaling of your gifts here. Now again, we just have this veil here doing nothing, and if we pick up, let's see, if we pick up, oh my goodness, this is crazy. If we pick up this Subzero Shroud, now we're going to lose our 10% multiplicative ability here from the Swift Destruction, but we can use, along our travels, we can use a mobility enhancer, or we just so happen to have an empty slot for hasten. Okay. I just love this game. So if we pick up hasten and mind and willpower up, and we have this damage multiplier, and we go down in health below half health, and we hit him with a radiant barrel, 17,313, and that does indeed have a knockdown, pretty much a guaranteed knockdown, and it has a piercing effect, whereas the Fusillade Rondo is a single target damage only, and so it will not pierce and do anything of the sort. So that's why running these two bayonets together, the Thunderbolt and the Libertador, they are situational. If you have large groups, definitely switch to the Thunderbolt and get that piercing effect. Let's see if I can. So see there, it goes through it. It's hard to get a 3D look here. And the Libertador is simply impacting the bag, but that one goes straight through. So yeah, this is crazy. Okay, and also you'll notice that the Libertador is no longer doing 1363 off of whoops. Again, your brain has to be just completely on fire here. So we're not doing 1363 anymore, we're doing 1636 because we're quick off of this. And again, these don't scale off of your veil, however Radiant Barrel does. Alright, so that should give you a fairly extremely in-depth look at bayonets, kind of how to build them, how to use them, what to look for in a build, what to look for in a code, what to look for in different gifts, and if I see any of you using Bridge to Glory out there, I'm going to be shaking my finger and saying, no, go watch the video. Or I'm just going to be laughing along with you. Either way, Code Vein is here for nerds like me to fully rip apart the math behind all of this, to figure it out so that we can bring to the table a great community to keep this game going strong. I hope you all learned something. If you clicked off in the first 10 seconds because you heard maths were involved, then that's okay. You know, this isn't for everyone, but for all the really hardcore bayonetters out there, and you want to learn how to build your bayonet to be ultimate bayonet, then this is exactly how you do it. So make sure you're paying attention to everything that Bandai Namco programmed into the game. Thank you all, and we'll probably pick up tomorrow evening with the Road to 100 series with a bayonet build that I've been putting together that has to do with Icor and everything else, kind of along the same lines of what we've been investigating, but also along these lines with our investigation here into damage scaling. So thank you all for joining me for 50 minutes of pure, unadulterated, glorious math and multiplicative damage multipliers.